Okay, well, today our final fair session is a Q&A about studying abroad in these COVID times. My name is Sarah Simonite, and I'm one of the associate directors in our Center for International Education. And I'm joined by Lauren Nelson, and I'll have her introduce herself real quick. But she studied abroad this past summer in Spain, and we want to give her an opportunity to share a little bit about her kind of testimonial of what her experience was like. So I'll have her do a quick introduction, and then I'll cover some points, and then we'll bring Lauren back. But Lauren, if you just want to say a little bit about your year, what you're studying, and then where you studied this summer.
Yeah, so I am a senior here at the college. I study public health as my major and then have a minor in Spanish and linguistics. So yeah, I studied in Alicante, Spain, which was absolutely incredible. I'm so excited to talk about it all. And yeah, I'm really grateful I got to do it despite COVID and everything.
Yeah, and like so many things with the pandemic, but certainly in planning a study abroad, and this past summer, it was not without its trials. So I can, testify that Lauren persevered through a couple of program cancellations, but it paid off, and she'll tell us a little bit more about that. But I'm going to go ahead and start a presentation and just cover a couple, points we want students to consider, and then, always feel free to connect with the CIE as you have, questions, whether it's next spring or, even in the summer, but hopefully we're going to see conditions only improve. So just some, considerations specifically for COVID and studying abroad is, really determining your personal health profile, any, medical conditions that you have, and really what your risk tolerance is, and certainly an important conversation to have with family members. Making sure you have a valid passport, and typically valid means it's good to be safe, let's say 6 months after the conclusion of your program. So if you are considering a spring 22 semester and your program would end, say, in May, then we want your passport to be valid through December, November of 22, which may seem like a long way away, but if you have a passport that you got when you were over 18, it is good for 10 years. If you need to apply or renew, there's a great resource on campus. Actually, our mail services is a passport application accepting agency. So there is significant delays in the processing time for applications. So really now, next week is when you need to submit that application. There's a link on the mail services website. They'll take your picture there. You'll submit the forms and send it off. So that needs to be a top priority if you don't currently have a valid passport. And then there's some great links here, and we're gonna, post this video on our fair site, and happy to share this information. But really reviewing and kind of bookmarking the U.S. Department of State. They have a dedicated info country specific COVID info pages. And so just monitoring what those conditions are. As we've learned, it's constantly changing. That's the one thing I think we can count on. So just staying abreast of what those local conditions are. Certainly there are travel advisories. That's been a standard kind of communication that the U.S. Department of State has always issued. Now there's certainly a risk indicator for help, but it's just good to know in general what that advisory level is for each country. So again, you can find that on the DOS website. And then also important are the entry requirements. I mean, the study abroad experience doesn't happen unless you can enter the country, and those can change depending on sometimes how the U.S. is doing with the pandemic, or maybe how that local country is doing as well. So, like, for example, unfortunately, there's some countries like Argentina that aren't currently letting in U.S. citizens. So, that's key information to know. That, again, those can change as we see improvements in our country, but important to know if you can even, arrive into the country. And if you are able to hopefully arrive, then there may be quarantine requirements by that government, whether you are vaccinated or not. So there may be testing that you may need to do within 72 hours. So that's important information that you can access through these resources. And, on a financial factor, if you do need to quarantine, is that an additional cost that you have to absorb as the student? Is that something maybe that's included in the program fee if you're studying with an exchange or an affiliate program? So just a question you want to ask and explore with your host program. And most of our partner universities and affiliate organizations, they're keeping COVID-19 specific websites where they're updating the information about their programs in certain countries. Again, as that changes, that's a good thing to look for in your resource as you're researching, and then kind of bookmark those pages. Some more considerations: you may not have the full experience if you're not vaccinated, as these requirements are coming down from, again, these sovereign nations. We're seeing countries like France and Italy are issuing these health passes or green certificates that visitors and residents may need in order to enter certain museums or universities, any kind of government controlled establishments. So that's something to think about. Because of that, we're seeing a lot of, particularly with the affiliate programs, the third-party organizations that students can study through, more and more are requiring students to be vaccinated, because they're seeing that these countries are implementing these certificates, health passes, and they are expecting that students are going to have a very limited experience if they don't have a full vaccination. And so, they want to help students, make sure they can maximize the time as conditions allow. And so we're seeing more and more of these requirements. So that's very important to think about depending on your vaccination status. Certainly, again, on the financial front, reviewing the refund policies with the host program, understanding, deadlines and the timelines for cancellation. That's important as well. And thinking about the possibility that classes may convert to online, hopefully maybe just temporarily, if a country does implement, or a region does implement, a temporary lockdown. So we saw that a few times in the UK. So just, kind of mentally preparing, there may, be a chance. Again, it just depends on the conditions of the country at that time. But hopefully we won't see anything, certainly to the extent that we did in spring 20. And another financial consideration is, if you're delayed in returning, because currently in entering the US, you have to have that negative COVID test within 72 hours. You may be feeling fine, have the vaccine, but unfortunately, if you test positive and aren't allowed to board that flight home, then you're having to, quarantine, obtain lodging in that host city. And again, those have financial implications. So kind of lots to think about, but what we want students to do is be kind of wrestling through these considerations and coming up with plans so they're not surprised or prepared if these conditions happen. So certainly don't want to leave on a negative note, although there have been obviously significant challenges with COVID, particularly through the study abroad field, but some of the positive outcomes that I think Lauren is going to talk about. And we also have a quote from 2020 graduate who taught English in Spain this past spring, is there's an opportunity for deeper cultural immersion into your kind of local community where you're living and learning. And that allows you to build connections and relationships that you may not normally do if you're kind of, traveling more frequently on the weekends. And really, there's so much to see within your host country. So you think about the diversity culturally, geographically within the U.S. That certainly applies to, many other countries as well. So, maybe where students were thinking of, traveling to different countries, if they have more limited travel within the host country, it also just gives them an opportunity to really know where they're living and learning. There's a reason, students are choosing to study in a particular country, and then having that opportunity to really maximize to see all that that country offers. And then two, we know, as we talked about, with Lauren, had some challenges in finally getting to her study abroad program. Really, you're demonstrating that perseverance, resilience, just a whole nother level. We're all having to demonstrate that as we continue to kind of work through this pandemic, but certainly in that international context, and you were still committed, students still committed to having an international experience, despite these challenges. And that's really something that can speak volumes for your employability when you're speaking in interviews, writing out resumes with future employers, and something, happy to help you, think through, and the career service can help you elaborate on that, because I think that's a great outcome that you can highlight, and making yourself even more marketable in the future for the job force. So as I mentioned, a spring 22 graduate, Matty Crow, she studied abroad with the CFC program during her time, as well as an affiliate, and she taught English in Spain. She was in Valencia, maybe a little bit hard to read, and so I want to speak out this quote. She said, "Living in Valencia, Spain this year in the midst of COVID-19 certainly was a unique experience, but I would not have traded it for any other. While I had to hold off on some international traveling adventures until conditions improved, I was able to really dive into Spain's Valencian region, taking day trips to visit and hike around other parts of Spain I would have never seen if I were country hopping each weekend. It made me embrace the Spanish lifestyle, work harder to meet locals, and truly integrate myself into the region, and especially the city of Valencia. Yes, COVID-19 changed a lot of what I would have originally thought my time living abroad would look like, but it gave me new opportunities to embrace where I was, getting on a first name basis with my guy at the bakery, meeting more Spanish friends, furthering my language skills, and leaving Valencia feeling like it truly had become my home." So without further ado, there is Lauren, just a little picture of her enjoying a visit to Barcelona there, but I'm going to stop screen sharing and allow her to share a little bit about her time. And so Lauren, I'll let you take it away if you want to maybe start with a little bit of the challenges that you had, and why you feel it was still worth studying abroad, and what you gained from it, particularly because of COVID.
Yeah, well, it started out, I originally had applied to study abroad in Argentina. And then that was canceled, but I was talking to Sarah and we were like, let's try to keep going. So then I tried Costa Rica, but that one didn't work out. So then they said, like, we're for sure doing Spain. So I ended up going on that one. And I really just wanted to go abroad. I just wanted some international experience. And I was so grateful for the place that I ended up. I had never even heard of Alicante. And it's actually very close to Valencia, which is funny. But yeah, it was just such a sweet place. And I thought that similar to what Maddie had said, like COVID really did allow me to get to know like Alicante, stay there. And like, yeah, I did go to Barcelona and I did go to Madrid like later on. But the month there, I got to, similar to her, I met like a guy and I'd get coffee from him every day at the cafe, and made like local friends, like, and we'd go get dinner and stuff, which I thought was like such a unique experience. And I remember I left one weekend to go to Barcelona, and coming home or coming to Alicante, like coming back after that, it really did feel like home. I was like, oh, I'm excited like to go home, even though like it's cool to be able to get to that point instead of like hopping around and never really feeling like at home.
Yeah. And how long was your program, and were you in Spain, and what international travel were you able to do, and for how long after your program?
So I was in Spain for a month in Alicante. That was the program. And then I went to Madrid to kind of like regroup, and I met a friend there, and yeah, so I think I spent like 5 days there because that's a great central place to leave out of. And then we got a COVID test and took an overnight bus to Portugal. And then I stayed in Portugal for about almost 3 weeks or so.
And can you share a little bit about obviously having a Spanish experience and how those, any kind of COVID protocols and restrictions, if you will, they have maybe quite different from what you experienced either in South Carolina or, where your home is during the summer? What are some of the kind of differences that stood out and certainly through the approach and the mitigation efforts that were made for the pandemic and how maybe that restricted your experience or impacted it?
Yeah, well, I would say that for one thing, if like having a vaccine does allow you to do more things. Like there were a couple times when they would ask to show a vaccine card.
Oh,
So
wow.
like even sitting in a restaurant or something, like you can't sit inside unless you show your vaccine card. And if you ever stay at hostels, they want a copy of your vaccine card, stuff like that. So that was one thing. And then definitely just like everybody does wear masks. Like it's not like it's like everybody does wear masks. And when I was there was also a curfew, which it was at 12, which I honestly didn't mind because I get tired early. But
Midnight 12, right?
Yes. But I also found it to be like kind of a cool way because we would all like my friends from the program, we would like group up and go to the beach after, or maybe go to somebody's apartment instead. And then it really allowed me to like get close to the people on my program and stuff.
Mm-hmm. As far as shops and restaurants were most open or maybe had limited hours. I mean, we know they eat later in Spain, so they're probably earlier dinner if they're closing at midnight, right?
Right, yeah. I would say that actually not most places, a lot of places are outdoor dining only. And then if you do want to sit inside, some will ask for your vaccination card. And other than that, it wasn't like it was probably like it was here in March, So you wear a mask and then you take it off to eat and everything. But yeah, it didn't really impact that, I would say.
Yeah, but most like shops and museums or historical sites, anything, landmark of interest were open.
Yes, they were all open, but required a mask.
Right. Were there any significant or differences that you noticed between Spain and Portugal? Because we know conditions obviously are unique to each location and sometimes within each region within a country, but did you notice anything different or is the same kind of protocols between the two countries?
I would say, if I can remember right, I don't think there was a curfew in Portugal. I would say that they were similar though, you wear a mask and then to eat you can take it off. But yeah, I didn't notice a huge difference in between the two countries.
Mm-hmm. And traveling within Spain, so did you, going from Alicante up to Madrid and Barca, did you travel by train or a flight? And what was that experience like? Like the show a vaccine card or?
Yeah, so to both Barcelona and Madrid, I took a train and you didn't need to show anything. And yeah, when I took the bus over to Portugal, you did need to show your negative COVID test. I think you could do negative COVID test or your vaccine card, which I think a lot of places offer. So it is also helpful because then you don't have to keep getting tests. So yeah, I think that was pretty much it.
Yeah. And you were required to wear your mask on the transportation?
Yes.
The buses, yeah.
Yeah.
Or train, sorry, yeah. Okay. Okay, well, and again, just for recording purposes, Lauren studied abroad in summer of 21. So we will wrap up any kind of final words of wisdom, Lauren, and why you would encourage, or I think you would encourage students to study abroad despite, some of the challenges we still, face with the pandemic. Some parting
Well,
words for your peers.
I would say be open-minded to anything. If you just want to get international experience, just persevere and um, be open to what comes your way. Because, like I said, never even heard of Alicante, and it was such an amazing experience. So definitely be flexible, be open-minded, and yeah, just go in with wanting to see the world.
Yeah, great words of wisdom, and you're glad you did it. You're glad you persevered.
Absolutely.
I think we know the answer to that, but great. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And we look forward to working with students. Always reach out to study abroad at cfc.edu as you're planning and researching your study abroad option. So thanks for listening.